warm welcome to the Flexpat community and all the avid podcast listeners out there. I'm Sigrid Winkler, founder and CEO of 𝘕𝘩𝘕, a horse stable in Shanghai, and I'm the proud host of today's episode of the Flexpat podcast. Here with me is an old friend of the podcast, Miriam Wickertsheim, General Manager at DirectHR, the German recruiter in China, and also you're the host of your own video series on YouTube called China Perspective, where you give hands-on advice on how to navigate the job market for employers as well as job seekers. I checked your channel today and I saw that one of your most recent videos went a bit viral. I'm talking about the one on the shocking Chinese labor laws. Congratulations on that. But please tell us a bit more about your exciting project.
Yeah, thank you, Sigrid. I'm happy to be back. My name is Miriam Wickertsheim. I'm working for DirectHR. We are one of the largest German-speaking recruiting companies here in China. I myself have been a recruiter now for about a decade and a half, and we support international companies in China and now slowly also Chinese companies going outbound, so Zhuhai, on their way abroad, as well as that we 2 years ago started operations in Thailand as well. So also in Thailand we play some senior management positions. Thank you also for mentioning my YouTube channel, China Perspective. It is something that I started in January this year, 2025. I'm really passionate about it. And the original motivation was that, I'm so active on LinkedIn, on social media and everywhere. And I get so many candidates who reach out to me and they always ask me the same questions. They ask me, how can I find a job? What is the market like? What is the salary like? How do I prepare for interviews? So I decided I want to do some educational videos. So instead of me telling the same story over and over, that we are doing it as a video, and then hopefully that can be helpful. The channel has been growing, I think, reasonably well. Now also touching some non-HR topics, general economic topics, and I'm really excited about it because I also feel our job as Flexpats is to try and help other people outside of China understand China better.
We will get back to some of the advice you also give in your video channel a little bit later. But as I said earlier, you were already interviewed with Flexpat podcast earlier last year in November 2024. For everyone who wants to recap your interview last year, it was episode 156. And back then you painted a rather bleak picture of the Chinese job market for Flexpats here. Basically, your message was there are fewer jobs for foreigners and the compensation packages have become smaller. So I invited you back today to check half a year later, is the situation improving? But more importantly, I also want to add on what you spoke about last time and hear some practical tips from you on how to navigate this pretty difficult job market. But let's start with the market updates. What can you tell us?
Okay, so I would say the situation has continued in some instances and has seen a slight improvement in others. So what has continued is an ongoing drive of international companies to localize their top management and also most of their workforce here. So what has happened from 2023, middle of 2023 onwards until last time we spoke is that we've seen foreign or Flexpat general managers, first of small, medium companies and then also of larger organizations have been asked to leave and have been localized. So I would say this trend has also continued into mid-level positions and technical experts, so individual contributor positions. At the same time, we do see more job opportunities for foreigners than I saw, at least personally, last time we spoke. However, it is very specialized. What we see at the moment, if you have a profile where you are Flexpat, you are what we call young and hungry, somewhere in your late 20s, very early 30s, and you're in a business development role. Ideally, you speak some Chinese, then at the moment there are many opportunities for you to find a new job. However, if you are a old China hand, with 15, 20, 25 years of experience, maybe from a manufacturing background, without Chinese language skills, and the market is still quite competitive. So it is fairly mixed. We are seeing some good positions coming up from good companies who really have used this time to set up their strategic structure. And there are a few good opportunities, but to be honest, those are still not en masse. What we do see is that there are some, I call them interesting Flexpat job opportunities where the Flexpats are searched for, but they may find themselves in a job situation that they would maybe not have accepted before the pandemic. That means either the location may be very, very far away, or the budget may have reduced significantly.
So there is slight improvement, but the situation is not as we knew it from before COVID yet, right? In this situation, if somebody finds himself or herself in a job search, what are the suggestions you have for us? Let's start with expectation management. How quickly, if I'm now in need of a new job, can I expect to find something?
That's a good question. And actually expectation management, I think, is something that's very important, especially for those of us who have been in China a very long time and who have in the past been searching for a job in what I like to call the golden times. So maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when China was growing and it was fairly easy for everybody to get good jobs in a short amount of time. I would recommend to everybody to emotionally prepare themselves for a 6 to 12 months time period of looking for a job. So when I say expectation management, it also means to help yourself regulate your emotions to the degree that you are not going to feel disappointed or disheartened or maybe upset if you're doing the hard work, you're sending out all the CVs, you're doing all the networking and the connecting, and there's not a lot of positive feedback coming back. So to just put yourself into the mindset 6 to 12 months, to also be aware of your financial planning. A lot of the, especially senior professionals we see now, they used to have very, very well-paying jobs. And while I don't know their personal finance situation, sometimes when I speak to them, I get a sense of urgency. And we all want to earn money, right? So that's very normal. But to be aware of what is your cost structure, do you have a spouse that's working, what expenses do you have, to just really maybe write it down to say, how is my financial situation looking like for 6 or 12 months, to just take that off as a burden. Also family or spousal support. Some cultures are fairly supportive if the spouse is the main breadwinner, is looking for a new job, and some I've heard that there's a bit of family pressure that can be happening. So having open conversations to make sure sharing this information with your spouse, to get your spouse to support you, which I'm sure most of them do, but to really have them as a cornerstone of your mental stability is very important. And then also having a plan B. A plan B can be something as simple as a red line to say, if I don't have a new job, which means meets whatever requirements by this date, then I'm going to go to my home country because maybe that's cheaper and start looking from there. Or if my husband or wife are Chinese and I'm not, maybe we split up for a few months while I search somewhere else. Maybe I will start my own business. Maybe I'm accepting a lower paying job. So there are many different plan Bs that you can consider, and it's good to have a plan. It provides mental safety.
Are there any places in the world where it's now easier to find a job? You just said that you're also doing recruiting for Thailand and Vietnam and so on. Are there better places than China to look for a job right now?
It depends on your profile. That is very, very difficult to say by and large. It depends on your profile how suitable it is for a job outside of China. It also depends on your profile how suitable it is for a job inside of China in China's new economy. And things like Chinese language skills, your industry background, all of that plays into it. What I would recommend you is that you structure your job search, no matter in which country, as wide as you can. And I'm saying this especially if you're like me from a German-speaking background. We always treat our CV, our personal data, almost like it's confidential. And of course, it's different if you're still employed. But if you're actively looking for a job, if you're today not employed, I would really encourage you to make sure to find all the recruiters you know, headhunters as well as in-house recruiters, and send them your CV. To connect on LinkedIn, to upload your CV on all the Chinese job boards, Lieping 51 Job, and so on and so on. To go and let your personal connections know that you're looking for a new job. I've noticed that especially with individuals who held senior management positions, there's a little bit of, I don't want to say ego, but self-image attached, so that people prefer to not let others know they are already on garden leave or they have been let go, because it affects how they see themselves or how they may feel somebody else sees them. But this is a missed opportunity, because if you have your industry network, these are the most likely people to be able to have a connection into a company where you could be a good fit. The same is true with WeChat groups. The Flexpat group is really great, alumni networks, and so on. So I would really encourage you to go as wide as you can to spread your CV, to spread your interest around, and to keep this moving. Also very important is to know where you should apply for a role. So if you're applying for, let's say, a mid-level management position or something like that, then the hiring decision will be made in China. So you can send your CV to a China HR or maybe to a China general manager, or if you know who the person will report to. If you are applying to be a China general manager or a China CEO, these decisions are not made in China. These decisions are made in the headquarters. So to send your CV to a Chinese HR director, for example, for a China GM position is most likely not the right way. So then I would encourage you to send it out to the headquarters.
You just mentioned a lot of different avenues to find a new job, LinkedIn and similar websites, then headhunters, coaches, etc., but also the network. Which one of those do you think has the highest success rate?
I think all of them. I know that many people find jobs via their network and connections, but of course for this you need to have a relevant network. So if you are in a certain industry and then your network is in your hobby group, this would not be a relevant network. So it depends how well you are connected in your own industry. So if that is really strong, that will probably be the most likely. It's important to understand for individuals the difference between headhunters, that's something like me, I am a headhunter, and a career coach. So a headhunter, we are individuals or an organization, we are hired by a company to fill a certain position. And what that means is that we have a job description, which is like a shopping list, what the company wants. Education, industry experience, language, and so on. And then we go out and look at all the candidates we can find in our databases, in our networking groups. We reach out directly, we do cold calling, all the ways we can think of to find a candidate who's a close to perfect match to this job description. What a headhunter is most of the time not doing is just speaking to every candidate if we don't have a job opportunity at hand. That is what a career coach is doing. So a career coach gets paid by you, the candidate. And a career coach will sit down with you, look at your CV, help you optimize your picture, your font, your layout, will walk you through the industry trends at the moment and where you can apply and what strategy you can have. And I'm highlighting this because, at the moment the job market is fierce. And I am, and I'm sure many other recruiters and headhunters as well, we get so many applicants. I get maybe 50 a day. And this has been going on for months and months and months. And, sometimes I feel there's a frustration or misunderstanding. Why am I not meeting with them? Everybody wants to buy me a coffee or pick my brain or just have a 10-minute, 15-minute introductory call. And most of the time, 99% of the time, I have to say no. Because if I speak to 50 people for 15 minutes a day, I cannot actually do my job anymore. And I always feel bad because there's so much frustration then, right? But this is what you're looking for this customized support. This is what a career coach is doing. And there are many excellent career coaches in China, Chinese ones as well as foreign ones. So I would really, if that's what you're looking for, encourage you to find one of those. However, career coaches usually don't have a job opportunity at hand. So a lot of career coaches then also send me CVs. But that I think for candidates is really important to understand. We are basically headhunters, and career coaches are the two sides of the same coin.
As one of the plan Bs, you also mentioned starting your own company. What is your opinion on that? Is right now a good time in China to do that? And how does it look on a CV, especially if it's just a company, in order to continue having the visa and not having a career gap on the CV?
That's a good question. I think there are different aspects to it. Is it a good time to start a company? Let me put it like this. There are individuals who start a company because they are in what I would call a working retirement. Working retirement means you're financially secure. So you don't need to work for money anymore. But you're still young, you feel full of energy, you still want to move something. So you're looking for a job and a purpose that is fulfilling, where you still make a difference. So then the financial aspect of this company becomes comparatively less important. And so I think then that's always a good idea, because you have comparatively less to lose. Another option, what we see, is that individuals who are having a passion that they had for a very long time. They've always wanted to start their own company, and then now they're in a difficult situation and they're just taking the plunge. And usually when you speak to them, you see they're glowing and they're happy. And these individuals usually also have a comparatively good chance, because they're so passionate about it, that they can for a longer time period weather financial instability. Because let's look at numbers. New companies have an extremely high failure rate. Out of 10 new companies, 9 don't make it. And this is global. And this is in normal economic times. And today, we are in a bit of a slow economy. We have a geopolitical situation which is challenging depending on which industry you're in, of course. So it is not what I would call normal economic times. And then there are individuals who just have been looking for a job and are finding it difficult, but maybe they have a Chinese spouse here or kids somewhere in the school, and they really love China. And I do too, and we don't want to leave. And so these individuals start their own company to keep their visa, and while they have their own company, keep looking for a new job. I personally think that's absolutely okay. And I personally even think that this is something people should be straightforward about, or could be brave to be straightforward about, because what does it show? It shows commitment to the market. If I'm a company afterwards, I know that this guy or this lady is going to stay in China because they went through all the trouble. So what's important, again, we talked about in the beginning about expectation management and also financial expectation management. If you had a job as a senior manager, you quickly made 1 million renminbi. You probably, if I look at our chat group, some of the CVs I know, you probably made quite a bit more than 1 million renminbi, in the good old times. So that also means that if you start a new company, you are probably going to work more than you did and make a lot less. So that is important for you to have your financial planning. Is that something you can weather because either you are already financially independent or you're super duper passionate? That's great. Or if it's just bridging you over. Otherwise, I would say it can be a challenging market at the moment, especially if it's in the consulting field. So we see a lot of individuals now becoming coaches and consultants, where I could imagine that after the economy has improved and they find a job in their original field again, that they go back to their original field. So that's the trend we see at the moment.
Let's assume our fictional job seeker has now landed an interview. Can you share your top tips on what to do, what not to do in a job interview in order to make sure to nail it and to get the job?
One thing I would really like to highlight is that interviewing is a soft skill. I give an example. We can all agree that public speaking is a soft skill. If you want to learn public speaking, you may get a coach, you read a book, you watch a YouTube educational video, and then you try. You speak in front of your family, your friends, or your soccer club. And it is quite similar with interviewing. So you have to learn on how to speak, not too long, not too short. Don't overshare, but be personal. One additional skill about interviewing that I really wish more candidates would be aware of so that can study is to anticipate what interviewers want to hear and what questions they will be asked. And this is a good opportunity. If you have a job description, the job description exists for a reason. So most, especially if you speak to a junior HR or an HR manager, many of them will do the technical questions first. So they will ask you about your experience that correlates with the responsibility and tasks of the job description. So I would really encourage you to look at it closely and to prepare a little story beforehand. That one time how you developed a new market, that one time how you dealt with a difficult client, that one time where whatever you did, that it says in the job description you're supposed to do in the new job, just prepare for it beforehand. So that is a really surefire way. Very often, candidates misunderstand what the company wants to hear, and they sometimes tell too long stories or too short stories, but not what the company wants to hear. And then sometimes, unfortunately, if the interviewer on company side is not so skilled to catch it, they just think the candidate doesn't have the experience or lacks the ability. And so sometimes the company representatives, they don't ask the follow-up questions. I would also really recommend to speak in numbers and quantifiable data. So instead of saying, oh, I raised the sales revenue by a lot, or the most ever in 3 years, to just say it was 125%, or it was X amount of million RMB. Or if you had cost savings, how much percent by what initiative. You don't have to be cold, but it would be good if it's a little bit prepared. Again, based on what you see in the job description. I would also really encourage you to prepare a very short self-introduction. 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, that's it. One question that's coming up a lot is strengths and weaknesses. We are still in an interview setting. So I'm not asking, or somebody is not being asked for their strengths and your weaknesses in a personal setting to be the best friend or the new buddy or a romantic partner. So it's a little bit weird, right? Because it's a personality. But what this question does, it also tests self-awareness and honesty and humbleness to some degree. So strengths, go for it. Go for it and tell what your strengths are. But the magic in this question is not your strengths, it's your weaknesses. And so a lot of candidates, I'm not sure, maybe they're not self-aware, or they just, we want to make a good impression in an interview. So it's very counterintuitive to say something negative about ourselves. So a lot of them say, oh, I'm a perfectionist. I always do everything great. Or I'm a workaholic. I work so much and I never rest. And as a human being, that's not good. But this is not a weakness for a company necessarily. So it is what I would even call almost a humble brag. So give an honest weakness. I give you mine. I have a horrible facial memory. I can sit across from you face to face for 2 hours and look at you. And if I see you out of context in personal clothes or sport clothes instead of office clothes, or at an airport or in a restaurant instead of in the office, then it takes a very long time for me to place your face to who you are. Doesn't mean that I don't know who you are. It's just facial memory is very poor for me. That is a legitimate weakness for a headhunter. And then I follow up. I have a way to fix it. I have business cards and I fold the corners. 1 corner for client, 1 corner for candidate, 1 corner for partner, and 1 corner for unlikely to cooperate. So and what are you doing with this? You're vulnerable. You're sharing your self-reflected honest weakness, which is really a weakness, and then you're sharing how you're overcoming it. And the last part is important. So also share how you're overcoming it. And that is really what companies want to hear. And in the very end, at the end of each interview, you will be asked, do you have any questions for us? And then please don't say no. Please prepare 3 smart questions. What are smart questions? Smart questions are not about your potential salary, not about your potential benefit, your holidays, your leave time, and so on. Smart questions are about the job or your future manager. So it could be, what products do you want to develop in China in this year? How is the headquarter planning to develop the market in X or Y? What kind of personality traits do people who do well in this department or in this company have in common? These are smart questions. this is what I recommend. And with smart questions, you can really finish very strongly.
You just said asking about the salary and compensation package is not a smart question, but as a candidate, I still want to know and want to start the negotiations, right? Especially if the compensation packages are becoming smaller and smaller. So when is the perfect time to address this?
So if you are a company or you're representing a company, you want to have this discussion as early as humanly possible. Because in the beginning, you have many, many candidates and the negotiation power is on your side. If you are a candidate, you want to have this discussion as late as possible. Because after you already met the HR, the team leader, the China GM, maybe you spoke to the global GM, your comparative negotiation power will have increased. Of course, it's a thin line to walk. If they don't ask you, that's one thing. But if they ask you and you are declining to provide this information or you're being vague on purpose, that can be a red flag. If there's any proper recruiting company or proper in-house recruiter involved, they should ask you very specifically about your current salary package as well as your expected salary package. Most companies are going to give a range for a budget or are going to say it depends on the candidate expectation and qualification. The reason is this. If as a company I say the budget for this position is between 1 and 2, for example, or 100 and 200, everybody is going to ask for the maximum. So this is why most companies are not giving the upper maximum because they are afraid that everybody will just ask for it. So it's a delicate dance and it's a delicate balance. And I can also understand how it can be frustrating on both sides. In the end, you as a candidate want to have the best salary possible and the company wants to get you the best candidate for the most reasonable salary, but both sides don't want to over or underpay. So this is something to keep in mind.
Do candidates usually tell the truth when they're asked about the current salary?
So I ask about salary always. What's important to know is that most companies will do a brief due diligence check. Not all of them, but all of them who have either solid internal processes or who are using a professional service provider. That means in the beginning, you will have a headhunter like me or an internal HR specialist ask you about your current salary, gross salary for how many months, what is the bonus, what allowance, housing, transport, insurance, what have you, as well as your expectation. And at this stage, they will not ask you for a verification. But later on, if you proceed to the offer stage, they will ask you to verify what you said. So this can be a snapshot of your bank account. This can be information from your labor contract, just something to prove that it's correct. Because it is so very tempting, and a system that we have for a salary increase is often based a percentage on the current or the last salary, which is not fair. Which is not fair because it often disregards the actual responsibility and qualification. But this is just how it is. So a lot of candidates are tempted to upgrade their current salary a little bit sneakily. I tell candidates, you can tell me now I don't need verification, but just to let you know, later on, you will be asked to provide proof. And there are basically two reactions. Reaction 1 is for a candidate to say, no problem. And reaction 2 is everything else. Can be a long silence, can be a little bit of stuttering, can be, oh, I misunderstood. That's the main part. That then candidates say, oh, I misheard or I misspoke or I misunderstood. And then, as a consultant, you go in and say, oh, that's quite possible. Let's go over it again to make sure there's no mistake. And then you get to the true number. And sometimes, often enough, there is really just a misunderstanding. A lot of us, we only get our net salary on the bank account, so we don't immediately know what the gross salary is. But that is something that happens in the recruiting process. So I would not recommend to be dishonest or to purposefully forget information.
Another piece of advice, we talked earlier about people who are already on garden leave or in between jobs, how to address this career gap in a job interview.
Yeah, so if it's on garden leave, an individual will be employed, still have a visa, and often enough still receive a salary from his or her previous company. and then you would just have a smooth transition. So the visa is being transferred and all of that. I personally don't take it in a wrong way, because we are all of us listening to this. We are all in the same market. We all know what the situation is. At the same time, the amount of candidates who really told me I have been let go is somewhere in the single-digit percentages. So most of them tell me, I always wanted to be self-employed, or I've decided to leave the company, or I was feeling dissatisfied in my company, so I decided to leave without having a new job. In the end of the day, it is open to you how you want to communicate it. I just would really hope that we can get out of this feeling of shame or discomfort that many may have. If you're unemployed, it doesn't mean you're worth anything less as a human being. It doesn't necessarily mean you did a bad job. We all know what the economy is like. We all know how the economy for many has been like for quite some time now. So this is not necessarily a reflection of you as an employee or of you as a leader. Sometimes it's just circumstances, and I really wish that people take that to heart.
Thank you so much for all your insights. I want to highlight again your YouTube channel, China Perspectives, because I saw this excellent video with 10 tips how to prepare for a job interview that were all to the point, and we couldn't go into all of them here. Looking back on your own Flexpat career, having lived in China for such a long time, what's the biggest personal or professional lesson that you would like to share with our listeners?
What I would like to share is something that relates very closely to a term we all know, and that is China speed. Keep moving forward, keep talking to more people, keep reaching out to more people, keep starting a new project, keep trying. Don't give up and don't stop moving. I think if we stop moving, it can be very difficult to gather momentum. As long as you keep momentum, even if it's just a slower momentum, you will eventually get there. Sooner or later, you'll be talking to the right person, you'll be in the right room at the right moment, and opportunities will present itself. China is certainly under pressure at the moment economically. However, China is also a huge market. There are so many opportunities here. We are in a transitional period, but that doesn't mean it's all bad. It also doesn't mean that how it's today, it will be the same next year or the year after. So it's always growing, it's always changing, there are always new opportunities coming up. So, and as long as you keep moving and try to be at least aware what's going on, expand your network, stay in touch with your network if you don't want new ones, then I think you have a good chance to weather the storm and to continue sailing into a better future.
So it's all about grit and persistence in the end. Well, I hope we will see you soon again on the Flexpat podcast, next time with a 100% positive outlook on the job market for Flexpats in China. But until then, I thank you so much for all the advice that you gave to our job seekers.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.